Bandek Foundation is an official ESG partner of the PropertyGuru Asia Property Awards and Asia GuruSummit Awards 2021. For around 19 years, Bandek has been supporting children and families to access public services. Thousands of children have been isolated in the construction campsite and urban slum in the last few months. We have been working closely with the construction sector leaders to ensure children can safely live in the construction site camps and have access to public services such as formal education and social protection services. Despite the challenges brought about by the pandemic, we continue to advise the construction sector to support construction workers' children with our social impact tools. To learn more about this initiative, visit our website at buildingsocialimpact.org. Thank you. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Our final session for the Sustainable Development segment is the Leaders Panel, where we'll hear insights from regional industry leaders on sustainable development and advocating for ESG, environmental, social, governance initiatives in the Asia-Pacific property markets. Moderated by our Aries 2021 chairperson Stephen Ohm, this panel features experts from around the region, namely Professor Jason Pomeroy, founding principal, Pomeroy Studio, Pomeroy Academy, based in Singapore; Ken Ip, chair and founder, Asia MarTech Society, based in Hong Kong, China; Stuart Mendel, managing director and country head at Lend-Lease in Malaysia; and Dr. Waradom Kampanchai, CEO and co-founder of Altotech Company Limited in Thailand.
Thank you, everybody, and it is a real pleasure to have this panel discussion today. The topic is sustainable development and advocating ESG, that's environment, social and governance. It's such an important topic, and it's in everyone's mind. It is going to be one of the big transition areas in our industry and of this generation. It's a really important topic, and it's really wonderful to have all the panel speakers here with all of our different experiences, geographic locations, and focus, and very much passion in relation to sustainable development and ESG. And I think that's where we'd like to start, is if everybody could just say a little bit about what sustainable development means to you individually, where you think we are at as an industry on sustainable development and ESG, and where we're going in the very short term and medium term in relation to sustainability and ESG. And Stuart, if we could start the panel discussion with yourself, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you very much. So I think, broadly speaking, we are on a precipice at the moment. And I think that's really exciting, that we have the opportunity to really affect change in our environment. And, I'm coming very much from a property perspective. But similarly, it's extremely daunting, because it's certainly my view that if we aren't able to affect change, then sort of science certainly says that we're going to reach the point of no return in terms of being able to improve the planet. So from my perspective, and I think that one of the positives, if there's many positives that have arisen out of the COVID pandemic that we've all experienced over the last couple of years, is that it's really shined a light on the environment and the importance of sustainability and the impact of global warming. And I think that it's accelerated the discourse that's now occurring around the world, and it's accelerated the impetus for both governments and corporates to seek to make a difference, and certainly at this stage to seek to put sort of targets out there, and there's certainly a big shift in that direction. So I think that there's that in that respect, there's huge opportunity. There's a moral obligation to make a change, and the time is now. So from an organisation, the Lend-Lease business, we develop real estate, we design and construct real estate, and we own and operate real estate. So across that full spectrum. So as an organisation, we've now introduced our carbon position, which is all around being, carbon zero by 2040, so absolute zero by 2040, and to be well on that journey by 2025. And that's at a corporate level. But what that means by default is that all of the projects that we develop and operate need to make big shifts or continued shifts in how they minimise their impact on the environment. And that's very much where our focus is. And it's a combination of environmental and social targets. So not just the physical, but also that social piece and how we introduce great benefits to the communities that we develop our property in. So that's how I see where the world's positioned, and I see where Lendlease and our industry needs to do our part to contribute to the improvement.
Stuart, no, thank you very much. Ken, Stuart said exciting and daunting, and I think we can certainly agree with that. Sustainable development and ESG, where we are and where we're going.
Yeah, just echoing on Stuart's point. From a business standpoint, I think ESG, environmental, social, and governance are three central pillars used when measuring the sustainability or ethical impact of an organization. I think currently there are almost more than 80% of corporations in the S&P 500 that are already publicly reporting their performance against these ESG standards. And in the real estate industry, I think historically, environmental initiatives such as reducing energy or water usage have been attractive to the asset owners because of their tangible financial benefits, such as reduction in operational expense and expenditures. So in other words, I think investors have and are coming into realization that sustainable investing isn't just good for the planet. It can also be good for investment performance as well. And also with the help of modern technology, it can now kind of advance to the point where if you just do a little due diligence, we'll basically uncover all the bad actors or underperformers in the market. For example, you can now use big data. There are many classification algorithms and outline detection that can easily show kind of like what companies are highest percentage of waste production. And also with social media, and there is abundant information you can find online. There are also other algorithms to rank whether a company is actually doing what they claim to be doing. And also with the growing popularity of wireless connectivities within buildings, you can now have the integration of AI and the Internet of Things into standard operating processes. And these all have potential to improve nearly all aspects of building management, for example. With AI, things like data from sensors and meters can be collected, and you can automatically analyze and identify areas of operation improvement, which can not only detect, but you can also predict and respond to anomalies. This will create significantly opportunities for companies to leverage technology to advance environmental performance, as well as create efficiencies across all the other elements within the business.
Thank you so much, Ken. That's wonderful. Jason, from a design perspective, a design and some exemplar projects, etc., some wonderful experience and achievements. Sustainable development, ESG.
Yeah, I mean, just want to build upon Ken's point there. I mean, Ken was waxing lyrical about the role of technology in this kind of new world that we're living in. And I think that we've all experienced how COVID has sharpened our minds to think about how technology can be used wisely in the midst of lockdown to be able to communicate and continue with our daily lives, whether it's ordering food or communicating with our loved ones or collaborating on projects from the comfort of our home, which has become not just a home, but a workplace, a sanctuary, a hospital, a school. And so I think what we're increasingly seeing is this new culture of resilience that underpins our common preconceived idea of what sustainability is. And for me, sustainability goes beyond the triple bottom line. I mean, I think we've all been waxing lyrical about social, economic, environmental principles. And even when we think about ESG, you've already got environmental and social pillars there. But I think we need to think carefully about culture, space, and technology as equally important pillars. So picking up on Ken's point, technology, a technological sustainability to enhance our daily lives. Space, we're living in a world where half the world's population are living in inner city centres. That's going to increase to 75% by 2050. That means we need to think more carefully about social spaces that can encourage social interaction and be the means of gelling us together as a community. And culture, the transmigration of people around the world, the notion that as we start to move from country to country to seek greater prosperity, prior to COVID lockdown, obviously, we are needing to ensure that we can preserve our own cultural identities in the wake of globalization. And so I think that culture, space, and technology should be equally important parameters that need to be borne in mind when we're thinking about ESG. And ultimately, the governance element means that we need to take those three additional pillars very seriously. And that can't be just controlled by corporates, can't be just controlled by state. It also needs civil society input. It also needs academic input in order to get a real true balance and hopefully create better environments for us to live, work, and play in.
Fantastic. That's wonderful. And Kunwaradon, in relation to sustainable development, ESG, where we are and where we're going in the near future?
Yeah, I think for where we are, right, I think I can talk based on like what I have seen and experienced, especially in Thailand, right? So for Thai government, we also have a target to go net zero. We want to go to be like net zero carbon or net zero energy by 2050. I think all around the world, I think especially when we talking about this issue at this time, it's the perfect time, right? Because for now we have COP conference, right? COP26 conference, and everybody talking about climate change. Everybody talking about how to go and to be like net zero. Everybody talking about how to limit the temperature to be like less than 1.5 degree. So I think based on where we are, I think we are at a good start. In Thailand there are a lot of program that promote renewable energy. For example, like solar, like wind. There are a lot of electric vehicle, vendors or company, abroad or even in Thailand. In Thailand, we if you have come to Thailand before, you're gonna see like tuk-tuk. Before, all tuk-tuk use gasoline, right? Use they fuel gas. But for now, many tuk-tuk it turns to be electric. You're gonna be like amazed when you come to Thailand. You're gonna see, this vehicle for now when you come here, it's all electric. Not only government that gonna drive this, but I think many businesses, and especially for me as a startup, right? We also thinking the same thing. I can speak as from startup perspective. We also, our goal is to be able to develop software that drive this ecosystem as well. We want to develop software that can connect to many Internet of Things devices. For example, devices inside the building, electric vehicle charger, or even power grid that gonna work together efficiently with the software. So we are in the progress of doing this. I mean, I started the company for 3 years and see not only demand from government or from society, but also from the client. Every client, especially corporate, they are forced by by regulations or rule that okay, they have to be sustainable, they have to reduce their footprint, and all of them have the goal of cutting 30% of their footprint by the next 10 years. So I think we on the right path to go and to achieve sustainability.
Thank you very much. I mean, there's so much to discuss, and as you've all said, in relation to sustainable development and ESG, There's so much to discuss in so many different ways. In the environment, a very good indicator, and certainly an area of high focus, is in relation to carbon emissions. So carbon emissions, we have been talking about that for a very long time. The IPCC COP26 has just recently happened. The IPCC formed in 1988, that's over 30 years ago. The CO2 levels in the atmosphere have constantly been increasing. They started measuring CO2 back in 1958 in Hawaii, and NASA reports on that every month. This year, we've seen the highest levels of CO2 that's ever occurred since recording started in 1958. The CO2 levels have touched 420 parts per million. Of course, we've had the COVID pandemic. So carbon emissions have been obviously very much impacted it, and you would think reduced very significantly. However, CO2 levels have kept increasing. I think that really shows how much carbon emissions are embedded into all of the aspects of our lives. And in our sector, in the real estate sector, we do represent approximately 40% of the carbon emissions in relation to the construction and operation of real estate globally. So we are a massive contributor, and the contribution of the real estate sector will keep continuing, because real estate is set to keep growing and growing and growing in all parts of the world, especially in the Asia Pacific region. And we're seeing the highest levels of CO2 levels that we've ever seen. So there's been a lot of discussion about these issues over not years, but literally decades. But I think now is the time where the transition is really occurring. There's so much attention and focus, and there has been so much talk. But now I think, because of the commitments, because of the focus by government, by big business, by yourselves, myself, all of us, in relation to, for example, carbon emissions, that there is going to be a very quick transition. And as Kunwaradom mentioned about how quickly vehicles can change from gasoline, carbon-based to electric. The transition in our property sector, there have been some shining lights and some great examples, and I would like to discuss those in this panel session now. But I think the real groundswell and the real transition, the real movement in the real estate sector is just about to happen. I'm very interested in what everyone thinks in relation to that focus.
There's obviously an extremely big question and topic that you've just raised there. And I think there's several ways to sort of approach that, but if we look at this, I look at it in two ways. So one is incremental improvement, and that's incremental in terms of the reduction of energy utilization of things in the buildings that we design. So how well the buildings perform and continuing to improve that. Then also incrementally in terms of the materials that we use that go into building these buildings, including how we do that. So the planning and the logistics behind how we build those buildings, moving more to prefabrication, moving more to sort of low carbon emitting materials, reducing the use of concrete and steel, but to the extent you can't, then working and shifting more towards sort of green concrete and steel and other elements. And then, where you go into the future, because that does make incremental change, but where you go into the future is what are the really big moves? Like what can we do as an industry to dramatically transform that? And Ken and Jason both talked about that use of technology, how technology may shape that into the future. And similarly, I think we'll move more and more towards that modular and prefabrication and the like, because I think that they can be done far more efficiently and managed in a much lower impact way from an environment perspective. So they're the sorts of things that come to my mind immediately, and things that we're looking to implement on our projects on a daily basis to get that improvement in the medium term.
Thank you, Stuart. And Ken, you focused very strongly earlier in relation to technology, but also you have a lot of experience with mainland China and so many markets, and also what's happening in regard to ESG analysis and reporting, etc.
Yes. Well, also I've had the privilege of working for and with many architects, interior designers, landscape designers, engineers, contractors, as well as developers, hotel operators, and even government officials. My observation is that I think within every project or development, it is always a great challenge to find and strike the balance between, design, commercial viability, which means to kind of reduce costs and maximizing profits, and to be environmentally conscious. I think that's why at the onset of a project, especially when you're working and dealing with various stakeholders and big teams, I think it is important to kind of define the KPIs that are mutually agreed upon, that we have measurements to define the success of an outcome. So in terms of buildings and constructions, I would say the green standards such as LEED, LED, and BREEAM are good reference and perfect examples, as they can help predefine the parameters of how a building is considered green and environmentally friendly. And to a certain extent, these measures will also reap financial benefits in the longer run. So satisfying both all design, commercial viability, and having a green, sustainable building, and providing the right equilibrium for the stakeholders. And it is with these green labeling schemes, I believe they're a good benchmark to provide not only just independent recognition of a building's low carbon and resource efficiency credentials, including aspects like energy, water, and biodiversity, but also its ability to provide a comfortable, safe, and attractive environment for the people who work in it. Because after all, buildings are there to kind of enrich our lives and not to destroy it. So, and equally at the corporate level, I guess I've been quite fortunate in the fact that the companies I've worked with all had a strong emphasis in promoting, the wellness or the well-being across the workplace, ranging from your physical health, like exercising, eating healthy, to mental well-being, such as stress and having a work-life balance, or more at a philosophical level, such as inclusiveness, cultural diversity, and providing equal opportunities. Because we all believe that well-being is an investment in the world's most valuable asset, which is the people, right?
Thanks very much, Ken. Jason, from a design perspective?
I agree in part with what Ken was saying there. I hope you don't mind, Ken, if I sort of agree to disagree to a certain extent. I think that the environmental rating systems are good for those who do need a guiding hand in order to be able to create greener built environments. But I think increasingly we're looking at green environmental rating systems as a badge of honor that very quickly become out of date. It's almost like me getting a 21-year-old birthday badge and saying I'm 21 today. Clearly I'm not 21. But I think it's important for us to be slightly more objective in our design assertions. For instance, if I've had a good round of golf, I may go to an environmental scoring sheet and I may score something slightly more favorably. And if I've had a bad round of golf, I may find myself being slightly harsher upon my subjective assumptions on that scoring system. And ultimately, when we look at green rating systems, there is an element of subjectivity. And I would sort of have a note of caution there if we are to invest too much time and effort into those. I think we need to try and strike a balance. I think an element of objectivity where we measure kilograms of carbon dioxide per square meter, where we measure kilowatt hours of energy per year. These are the true measures if we're trying to create a zero carbon future. And in the work that we do as designers of zero carbon districts, and I designed the first carbon negative house where the house generates more energy than it can consume. Sure, it got a Green Mark Platinum rating, but we were more interested in the fact that we were able to reduce quantifiable kilograms of carbon dioxide per square meter and get to that embodied zero carbon or even carbon negative position. And what that really means is that you then also have to step outside of the box and move away from the silo mentality that the designer does his thing and the engineer does his thing, but you actually try and create a greater means for different parties to pull together in a common voice. That silo mentality where you've got agencies doing one thing, agencies doing, engineers doing another, architects, designers, all working slightly much in a bubble. We need to break down those barriers to ensure that the process of sustainable delivery allows us to get to the sustainable product. And ultimately, I think that governments have to do a lot more in stepping up to kind of say, look, at the end of the day, here we are. Yes, we're scratching the surface. And if you look at, as you pointed out earlier, Stephen, which was incredibly spot on, you know, the cataclysmic effects of climate change are already upon us. COP26 will be talking about this ad nauseum. And I think that just for us to be kind of getting a platinum rating doesn't go far enough. We need to be looking at carbon negative futures. We need to be looking at far more advanced methods of carbon sequestration if we're trying to preserve the planet for future generations.
Jason, thank you so much. Kun, word on?
Focus specifically on residential and properties. I think I see lots of change. Actually, for our startup, right, our client mostly they are hotels, buildings, school, hospital. I think we see lots of change in needs and their requirements, right? For now, in Thailand, we not only talk about energy sustainability, but also after COVID-19, many people think about indoor air quality. So this kind of are the things that we need to when we want to digitize properties in the future. We need to think many aspects: environment, energy, indoor climate, etc. So actually, based on what the target the target market that we looking, we see many buildings. It's kind of you can see there are a lot of devices, a lot of platform in the market, but with that there's a good side and bad side, right? For the bad side, there's so many devices, there's so many brands that can do IoT, right? So for those devices, they kind of for buildings, they kind of it's really hard to make decision which platform or which device that they can use. One building cannot use one brand. So I think with this for when we working with developing the platform, what we can solve for them is that many building, many residential or those businesses, they require how can we make all the brands, how can we make device from all vendors that can work together so that it can help us to minimize energy consumption, to minimize the carbon footprint. And many corporate goal is even how they can install solar, putting battery so that they can achieve the goal to be net zero energy. At least not the whole thing can be net zero carbon, but at least net zero energy at that property. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do, and there's a lot of challenges, there are a lot of opportunities that we can do. I think as it's really exciting. I mean, to work in this area, and you're gonna see around Southeast Asia, around the world, right? That's the introduction of energy storage, of electric vehicle charger, of solar. inside the building, and all air cons or everything, every device inside the building can talk to each other. I think that's come with a lot of opportunity for us, and also like for many solution provider, property developer, or even like more environmental solution that can put into residential sector or those buildings.
No, thank you very much, Kumordam. I think that where we are with technology right now is a different place to where we have been until very recently. Our ability to be able to get information and then really produce an analysis which really gives concrete results rather than perhaps emotional type feelings and indications, but real data. And I think everyone has touched on the importance for real data and sometimes very simple metrics and parameters, as both Ken and Jason were talking about, to have very clear parameters and metrics for those parameters so that we can really understand where we're at and that we've really achieved something. And that's really, really important. And also Stuart mentioned, and I really appreciated it, the term incremental improvement. I've been involved in net zero projects and initiatives, as have many of us, and they are extremely important. They are the F1 of the industry. They are where some real breakthroughs happen, where we can really see the ultimate achievements. But of course, sustainability, ESG, needs to happen throughout the whole industry, not only for new projects, also for existing projects, for property portfolios, and for the projects that at the moment haven't even been or are only just now being envisaged. And I think Stuart's term of incremental improvement is such an important one, because we can do things in big leaps and bounds. We can, and yes, we should if we can. But very often, how we will achieve really great change is like the CO2 increases. They're happening less than 1% a year, but every year it's increasing, it's increasing, it's increasing. And if what we can do with sustainable development, our focus on existing buildings and new buildings, and ESG and all of those factors, is if we can, using Stuart's term, incremental improvement, step by step by step in better directions, we can achieve so much. If we can achieve 3% reductions in CO2 levels in 30 something years, we've achieved 100%. And that's only a little bit every year, a little bit every year. Incremental improvement, I think, is a huge part of sustainable development and ESG's future. And also, to pick up on one of Ken's topics, and I'd like for us all to discuss this because I think it's so important, and I think it's one of the biggest barriers to sustainable development really flourishing as quickly as it should and must. And that's in relation to, Ken said, commercial viability. And I really feel that there is an ethos, a lens and a focus that businesses need to be and are necessarily focused on profitability and financial investment and all of business strategy on one hand. And then on the other hand, as a separate composite ideal, businesses need to do the right thing and do sustainable development and ESG. And I really think that's been framed and conceived incorrectly. I really think that there is so much that can be done and should be done, and I think the leaders will do. The commercial viability and sustainability, getting away from the business as usual, is the same topic. We want to move away from business as usual because we want to be more profitable, we want to be more successful, we want to be more differentiated as businesses. And that's exactly what needs to happen with sustainability and ESG under all of its parameters. And I really believe they're the same subject. And I really appreciated what Ken said. about commercial viability. I think it does drive sustainability. I think it does drive ESG, and I think it should, and I think it can. And I'm very interested in what people think about that, because I think so often sustainability is seen as a moral corporate vision that they must add to their lens of profitability. And I don't think it's like that.
So I think, and I apologise, there's a jackhammer started in the building next door, so there may be some background for me, but we'll see how we go. I think it's a blend. So I think organisations clearly have an obligation to return value to shareholders and the like, so public companies. It doesn't have to be maximise profits. It's to get a responsible profit, having regard for our other obligations, and delivering sustainable outcomes is clearly one of those. So not profit at the expense of safety, at the expense of sustainability, but to deliver them holistically. But I think the other piece that's really important, so we also use sustainability as a point of difference, so something to position ourselves apart from our competitors, and we do that, from a positioning perspective, but also as part of that, moral obligation and obligation to the planet. But I think the other thing to turn our minds to is, how do we convince and demonstrate to the customers the value that we're providing? And I don't mean institutions. I think institutional investors have already turned that corner and are starting to value assets that have better performance from a sustainability perspective. But residential customers, retail customers, convincing people the value and the benefit of sustainability, such that they're prepared to pay more for it. When we talk about people buying, electric cars and things, at the moment they are still substantially more expensive. We're having to convince people on moral grounds and other grounds. It's certainly not on necessarily a value for money at the moment. And I think a lot of the product that we create in the property sector is the same. How do we demonstrate to our residential customers that it's worth investing more to get a more sustainable, higher performing apartment? If they're going to rent it, then they may not see the value from reduced energy bills, for example. So we spend a lot of time and effort making sure that we can demonstrate those sorts of things to our customers. And I think residential customers are becoming more savvy and are starting to make sure that they're asking those questions. So it's how do we add value from a revenue perspective, as well as getting the balance in terms of from a cost perspective as well.
Thank you, Stuart. Ken?
Well, first of all, allow me to talk a little bit about marketing, because this is what I do for a living.
Yes.
From my experience, marketing as a discipline or as a business function, it's often and very much misunderstood, especially within our industry, the real estate industry. I think a lot of the times, marketers tend to be mixed up with people in sales and business development, or being regarded as just someone who does and helps with organizing events, or even just someone to help post things on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and what have you. I think that's very unfortunate. That being said, as far as ESG is concerned, I believe there is a much bigger role for marketers, not only to help promote, advocate, or increase the awareness of ESG, but more importantly, is to help define and shape a business ESG's proposition, to ensure the story being told is actually indeed true and authentic. So in other words, your customers, stakeholders, and investors must believe in the values, the outcomes, and the goals communicated are indeed embraced and strategically kind of weaved into an organization's fabric. And I feel that most real estate companies and developers out there in this region of the world, this part of the world, are still slightly falling behind. So there are room for improvement. But it's funny, having said that, on the contrary, I think the tech companies in general does a far better job. And I think mainly for two reasons. One is because most tech companies are relatively young and new. And they still have this startup culture kind of mentality in the DNA. and they believe in empowering and engaging their employees in ESG efforts. And I guess, secondly, most of the company founders are also generally younger, which means they understand and can resonate better with the newer generation of consumers, their needs and concerns with the social and environmental impact of corporations. And you can also see many companies are starting to realize that ESG can make very good business sense. So for example, according to a recent research by McKinsey, I think close to 60% of millennials are willing to spend more on brands with a corporate social responsibility commitment. And they will also reward them with brand loyalty. All of which makes ESG marketing, telling a genuine story ever more so important.
No, thank you so much, Ken. And I really appreciated you emphasizing ESG being true and authentic. It's so important. And thank you for emphasizing that. It's really great. Jason?
So when I set up Pomeroy Studio back in 2012, and basically wanted to ensure that whatever we designed would be truly deep green and not the smattering of green fairy dust over our buildings. It was truly because it came from this position of frugality. I mean, for years, even as an 8-year-old child in my back garden, building sort of wigwam tents out of my mother's bed sheets and sort of lashing together pieces of timber to create sort of homes that would allow us to play cowboys and Indians. It was always trying to make use of the locally sourced materials from my mother's house. And I think that the element of frugality is core to going back to basics, using locally sourced materials, natural light, natural ventilation, doing the right thing for the environment. And setting up Pomeroy Studio back in 2012 on the basis of really trying to go back to basics. People thought, you're absolutely bonkers. Why on earth would anybody want to do this? But I think that when you look at corporations like Lendlease, when you look at those corporations that are trying to build back better and do the right thing, I think we see a gradual shift in mentality, but we also see a shift in civil society's mentality, because it's not just the will of corporations to try and toe the party line of what governments are saying about how we need to be green. Civil society are increasingly saying now is the time to actually make that shift. And so for us, it was about not just setting up a studio that was deep green and creating zero carbon developments, but it was also coming from a point of view of objectivity and authenticity, which is why the Academy was set up to basically partner with the best institutions in the world, like Cambridge, like Nottingham University, like James Cook University, and do forward-looking research into zero carbon development, the role of urban greenery, modular construction, in order to embed the learnings into the bricks and mortar in which we're creating. And to then tie back to marketing and trying to get it out into the public domain is increasingly important, that we wanted to go beyond the lecture theatre or beyond the developers that we're working for to actually the general public. And that's why the TV show that I've been doing relating to smart cities or the culture of cities has tried to bring the green agenda to the broader public. So I think it's increasingly important that we leave the seed of green, leave the seed of ESG, not just in the hands of a couple of individuals within corporations, but we try and seed it across civil society, policymakers, corporations, academia. And I think increasingly we're finding this common voice now. We just need to make sure that we keep up the momentum. Otherwise, we're just doing tokenistic gestures again.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I think it's getting closer and closer to being intermeshed, isn't it? That people are bringing it together. Really holistic reviews are being done. People are revisiting things that maybe 5 or 10 years ago really didn't work, or that was their assessment at the time, and now being revisited. There are different opportunities, and I think Kumwardam, from a technology point of view, that very much is bringing people together and helping that intermeshing of ideas to bring about different outcomes.
Yeah, I think Ken mentioned very interesting about marketing, right? But I think I would like to emphasize on collaboration side. I mean, for example, like in Thailand, right? So for us, we are a tech company, tech startup. We involving the program from the government called DIPA. So they have smart city program. So they asking startups, they asking many tech company who have different solutions to come together to solve the city issue. So there in city there can be a lot of problem. There have many businesses, many many kind of people, variety of things that they have to solve. So I think yeah, when we like bring all this technology together, all these people together, we can create something really amazing and can solve the real city issue. So for us, we have been to the northern part of Thailand, and we are going to the northeastern part of Thailand. So I think for now, looking at the tech company, we cannot working by ourselves. It's not possible to solve. We want to go net zero. We want to go we want to achieve like ESG goals. We cannot. We have to work with partners. So for us, it's kind of like how this tech company can form collaboration with partner, and come up with some solution that can really solve this environmental or like society issue. So I think collaboration is the key, and no single company gonna win or gonna not talking about win, right? Not going about they cannot make big impact without collaboration. So I think yeah, we people has to work together and tech. There are there are so many aspects of tech that can solve the issue. Like for example, like big problem, AI, Internet of Things, big data, blockchain. So I think all this solution and tech company has to collaborate.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So we've looked at so many different aspects of sustainable development and ESG in this panel discussion, and thank you very much. The COVID pandemic's really changed so many dynamics, the way that we look and view about things, how people work, how productivity is measured, how participation is considered. There's so many changes, and those changes are going to be permanent. And of course, under ESG, we are coming together in new ways, and that needs to happen to change the business as usual. And business as usual is certainly going to change. It's for sure. COVID has really dispelled and eradicated certain mindsets around how we cooperate and interact. And as we've been focused on in this panel discussion and in the whole of ARIS 2021 about big intelligent data and how that is a new frontier for all of us in the real estate sector and beyond, in our personal lives in every way. In relation to the changes that's happening and the social aspects, the S in ESG, and the governance aspects, and I really like Ken's point in relation to ensuring that the messages are understood even vertically and horizontally within an organization, as well as the marketplace and beyond, is so important. Because of COVID, because of the focus with COP26, because of all of these factors and what is going to be the new normal, in relation to sustainable development and ESG, what do we think is going to be the biggest transformational step in our very near future in the next year?
A little question, Stephen.
Yes.
I think what was going through my head, and it's not transformational, but what I have become more aware of over the COVID time is the importance of great places, like places where people can interact, and how sort of dependent on that. People have remained throughout COVID. So, we've had many, many months where we've been restricted with our movement, restricted with our social interactions. And I've watched over the last 2 years, another positive, if you like, of COVID, got to stop looking with quite the glass so half full, but with COVID is that it has encouraged many, many Malaysians here in Kuala Lumpur to walk the streets and do exercise in the mornings and in the evenings, particularly given the heat here in KL. So that we're seeing the streets come alive before work and after work, like I've never seen it before. And it's that social interaction, the physical interaction that people really, really thrive on. And that no matter what the COVID's thrown at them, that's become even more important. And I think it really emphasises the importance of great placemaking and creating great places in the cities that we develop, and that will stand the test of time no matter what. And if anything, it's even more important than it was before. The quality of the spaces we create to allow the communities to thrive and to really, really sort of come alive and be able to interact with it. And that adds to that whole mental health and well-being that is really an important anchor of society and of community. So maybe it's not revolutionary, but to me it underlines how important that piece of what us as people in the development space do and how important it is to create those environments.
No, Stuart, that's a really nice point. And that, placemaking has always been so important and such a coveted prize, but it, like sustainability, has perhaps been viewed as a nice to have. And now that's transitioning to, we must achieve this, and we must actually achieve it. And we want people to see that we've achieved it. And it's such a good point. Thank you. Yes. Ken?
Well, Stephen, to answer your question, I would say technology would still be the key.
Yes.
As far as technology is concerned, I would say that China, since I'm based in Hong Kong, is probably one of the early adopters and pioneers in applying AI, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, IoT, Internet of Things, and data into building and construction industry. I think the experience and applications of MIC, modular integrated construction system, which Stuart mentioned, are well documented. For example, they can easily build an entirely new hospital within 10 days, as it was demonstrated, during the early days of the coronavirus, to accommodate, the seriously ill and to fill the emergency patients, and also building a 10-story high residential building in under 28 hours. I believe this is still currently the world record. So speed is obviously important, but the technologies that have been applied also enable greater efficiencies in labor, reduce wastage of building materials, which in turn reduce carbon emissions at construction sites. Speaking of technologies, I think there's another emergence of the e-commerce and the mobile applications. So I'll take China as an example. They have introduced recently a number of so-called amended premises, from convenience stores to supermarkets to even a hotel, such as the Fly Su Hotel by Alibaba. So guests can now do everything from reserving a room and checking in online using just facial recognition, to turning out the lights, drawing the curtains and adjusting the air conditioner, all without human assistance. And these are all possible thanks to robots equipped with artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things technology that kind of connects all the devices to the internet. And all of these measures mean, operating costs at amended smart hotels, such as Fly Su, are now only 60% that of conventional hotels. And also with automation, it is all possible to save on water and electricity as well as labor costs. And with IoTs, you can also collect a lot of useful data to help improve the overall services and your customers' customer journey and guest experience. So to answer your question, technology would be the key.
Ken, thank you so much. And your examples really show and demonstrate and illustrate that business as usual as we know it is really going to change. That's inevitable. It's absolutely certain. So what is business as usual going to be framed by? What is it going to be replaced by? And certainly sustainable development and ESG are the lenses in which we need to view the immediate future. And thank you very much. Jason?
I think it goes back to the first point that I was making about shaking up the sort of whole concept of what sustainable development is and how it goes beyond the triple bottom line of social, economic and environmental issues to also take into account space, culture and technology, which arguably ties back to what Stuart and Ken were just mentioning in relation to placemaking and technology. So when we think about space, if we're going to be seeing 75% of the global population living in inner city centres by 2050, what does it tell us? It tells us that despite a constant wave of pandemics over the course of centuries, whether that was the bubonic plague, whether it was the cholera and typhoid pandemics during Europe in the 19th century, whether it was SARS, whether it was Spanish influenza, irrespective of these cataclysmic viral infections that were, terminating the population, we still ended up in cities. Why? Because cities are these hubs for trade and commerce, and they will continue to grow unabated. And I think we just need to get to the mindset to realize that COVID is a pandemic and it will be an endemic that we need to live with. We will see a return to the cities. It does not mean the death of the city. It does mean that the real estate that we're creating needs to be more flexible and adaptable. Those points when we have to retreat inside the home means that we need to be more spatially aware and create greater spatial flexibility. Those terraces, those sky courts, those sky gardens will provide opportunities for wireless working and social distancing. That spare room that you have in your home will be the sanctuary, the clinic, the school, the workplace. And so the ability to start thinking about how we can adapt internally our spaces is going to be more pressing in our real estate equations. The other thing I would say is the future of mobility, and again, relates to space. If we think about how Barcelona were incredibly adept to trying to reduce car traffic on the roads, to pedestrianize the city centre and create these super blocks, which basically handed the streets back to the pedestrian, I think we're going to be seeing more of that taking place. We're going to see greater opportunities for pedestrianisation, the embrace of greater opportunities for public transportation, but also the ability to look to the sky as the new dimension. I mean, we're designing Asia's first air taxi terminal. We're going to be seeing drone taxis taking flight in Singapore within the next 2 years. And I think that what we're going to see is a greater improvement of our first and last mile journeys by thinking about air rights, how we can be using the rooftops of large retail environments, large warehouse environments, dock environments, as an opportunity to enhance our mobility, not just underground through MRT systems, not just overground using autonomous means of transportation, but above ground in air taxis. And ultimately that paints a very rosy picture of our 21st century urban air mobility.
Thanks so much, Jason. Kun Wardon?
Yeah, I think for what gonna drive, I think it's gonna be about standard and regulation. Most of the speaker has touched on technology, on other aspect, right? But I think what can also gonna drive is like for example, like for in Thailand we have building energy code as standard. So all new buildings that gonna be constructed, it has to pass that standard. And we also have we have building energy code. We have like high efficiency energy building. We also have zero energy building standard that gonna reduce the building that gonna build like 15 years 20 years from now, they're gonna cut their footprint by like 300%, meaning that from from maybe from 150 kilowatt hour per square meter, this year. So for zero energy building, they have to cut to be like 50 kilowatt hour per square meter of energy consumption per year. So I think by having a standard and regulation that everyone had to comply, it's gonna drive a lot of solution that gonna gear toward that target. I think, and also, for example, like some of the building can not only looking at energy sustainability standard, but they're also looking, for example, like well standard that gonna define indoor air quality, like CO2, PM 2.5, temperature, humidity, or something like that. I think this with the right set of regulation and standard is gonna drive technology to happen. So that's what I want to mention.
Thank you, Kumardam. And your point is well taken. The minimum standards, the things that we must do, are going to change. The old ways of doing things and perhaps ignoring certain issues or not focusing on them, that's over. And the regulatory change will happen, and it should happen, and it is happening. And then on top of that, there are so many exemplars, and those exemplars in the real estate industry are going to become the new normal. Stuart mentioned about placemaking, and if you're successful at that, you will do very well. And if you're not so focused on that, or you don't achieve that quite as you could, that could be a very sad state of affairs. And that goes at a building level, individual home level even, up to mega developments and the developments of cities, as Jason was referring to. We started off the panel session by saying sustainable development and ESG, it's exciting and it's daunting. And I think that's certainly true. It is challenging, and there's a lot of opportunity in relation to how people come together, as we've all said, utilize technology, ensure that what happens is commercially viable, and sustainability and ESG must be done through the lens of commercial viability. We holistically review, really understand the data, the information that we have, and we can apply that to new buildings, existing buildings, individual buildings, collective buildings, neighborhoods, cities, and really achieve something which must be done. And it's good business sense as well. And I'd really like to thank all of you, all of what you're doing in relation to your personal contributions as well as your organizations. And what's so beautiful about the real estate industry is what we do and what we've achieved is there to see. So are the increasing carbon emissions and so much else. So there are real things that we can focus on and we can really achieve with things. And I'd like to thank all of you for all of your contributions, not only to RS 2021, but to the industry and helping us move forward in the direction that we need to. So thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you at RS next year. Thanks again.